Thank you for inviting me here. It is an honor to present some of the result of a kind of big project that I was involved in the past 3 years that have been funded by EU. This project was one of the not so many measures that have been dedicated to cultural heritage in Italy in the past 3 years in developing research on cultural heritage in Italy, and the project is called Project Changes. Project Changes is a very big project, was funded by 116 million euros, spread out on 9 different topics of research that were called spokes. And each spoke was dedicated to a theme, technically, okay? And the spoke that I'm going to talk you about today is Spoke 4, where I'm involved directly. That was dedicated to the use of virtual technologies for the valorization of cultural heritage. So that was the main topic. The goal was indeed to use digital and virtual technologies to increase knowledge, curation, and management of artifacts in all forms that are available in our country, and by also trying to increase the involvement of the public that usually interact with cultural heritage, with the possibility of setting up new ways of interaction, new narratives that can be built on the cultural heritage that we have available in the country. Mainly, Spoke 4 was basically organizing 2 main activities. The first one, doing experimentations by means of these technologies, but not only laboratory experimentations, but use cases experimentation by involving existing cultural heritage institutions in the country from north to south, within the research that we wanted to address, and also at the end of the story, at the end of this experimentation, to share guidelines and also tools to be reused in future in cultural heritage institutions in Italy and also outside Italy, by adopting primarily open technologies, open formats, open licenses for all the products that have been created in the context of this project. So the main activities were organized basically in 2 moments, in 2 periods. The first 1.5 years was dedicated to work a lot with cultural heritage institutions to set up research that is functional to both the researchers involved, so to do explorations in terms of what we can do by using these technologies in cultural heritage, but also that have a return to the cultural institution itself in order to have direct benefit for the cultural institutions, because that research should align with their agenda, and so to go through what they had to do in general in their context. We have developed a lot of case studies. I will show some of them in just a sec. Together with the pilot study, that is the focus of this presentation, that we have used as main representative for developing guidelines for digitization, 3D digitization of cultural heritage. The second period was more about the implementation. Once we have defined the guidelines, we have used them together with companies that were involved to implement the various case studies, the various research that we have set up with all the people and cultural heritage institutions involved. And finally, to monitor and assess the result of what we have done, and in particular, how these case studies were perceived by the users. So technically, the citizens going to museums and using somehow the outputs of what we have done in the past 3 years. The core case studies were 9, and that they have been funded by specific cascade calls within the project in order to involve, as I anticipated, that industries, companies in helping us in developing in instantiating on the various cultural heritage institutions the work that have been done, but these core case studies were also accompanied by research case studies, like the pilots, just to mention, that were not funded by the Cascade call, but still involved the researchers involved in Spoke 4 across the entire country to do some additional experimentation on specific cultural heritage institutions. We have considered 6 different templates of museums and art collections that were basically the focus of our research, that goes from high density of innovative museums, so museums that already use a lot of digital and virtual technologies in their narratives at the museum itself, but also other kind of museums that have none of these technologies used, like, I don't know, sites museums with intangible heritage, just to mention a few. And we have had the pleasure to work with a very heterogeneous set of cultural heritage institutions across the country, experimenting these different use of virtual technologies for different purposes. So we have, just to mention a few, Egyptian museums involved, a lot of university museum systems involved, but also literary parks. The Levi Park and the Leda Park in Italy. So this is just to mention the technical example. These are the core case studies that we have created during the project. The pilot study, though, that I would like to introduce to you today was based on an exhibition that was held at the University of Bologna in Palazzo Poggi's museum, and that ended. Actually, it's not there anymore, so you cannot see it anymore, physically speaking, at least, because it ended in May 28, 2023. That was dedicated to the person of Ulisse Aldrovandi. That was one of the most attended exhibition at the university. They have sold more than 33,000 tickets. Is a kind of exceptional event, okay, for us in particular, and we started there because with that specific exhibition for several reasons. First of all, it has a plethora of very different heterogeneous set of objects exposed there with very different problems to digitize them. That was the technical thing, because having such a heterogeneous scenario allowed us to work a lot on defining guidelines for different kind of purposes and situations. In addition to that, it was a pity not to have a proper, let's say, exhibition still available for the public, being so successful for the university in general for the public. And so we wanted to try to preserve, that's the idea, that exhibition in time, but offering it through a different medium. Instead of going there physically, going there digitally by using normal tools that anyone can have at home. So the idea is just to create a digital twin. That's the point of the entire temporary exhibition that could be visited by anyone by using your own computer at home, a tablet, or if you have a VR headset. So to enter directly within the space, the virtual spaces of the museums. And the browser. The only thing that you really need is a browser. So Firefox, Chrome, whatever, that's the only software that you need to access it. By the work that we have done there, we have, as I anticipated, extracted kind of general guidelines for 3D digitization workflow that then we have reused within the other core case studies of the project. These are, I don't want to enter in detail here, there are plenty of details in the paper that are linked there, but the idea is that it's a series of sequential steps that we have set up through the experience that we had in the pilot in particular, that goes from the acquisition of the physical object into a series of digital artifacts that then bring into the final object that is exposed within the digital twin. That includes, of course, not only the object, the digital model per se, but also a set of metadata talking about both the physical endeavor, but also the digital endeavors that we have created. And in particular, just to make an example of how many objects are there, described also by the metadata, there is the original cultural heritage object, the physical thing included in the exhibition that have been acquired, but this digital physical thing comes with, because we have, of course, created them, a lot of metadata that describe the object, the physical object itself, but also information about the provenance of the physical object itself, what is the cultural heritage institutions that is hosting the object, even if it was present at the exhibition. It may not be the University of Bologna, because a lot of objects have been provided by other cultural heritage institutions across the country. These two levels of metadata, so metadata about the object and provenance about the object, have been collected within a metadata record. And that metadata record itself has its own provenance metadata. So we keep track also about information about the sources that we have used for defining this metadata, and also information about the change tracking of the metadata, because it is totally fine that we made mistakes, that we have incomplete metadata there. We can enrich it in time, but we want to keep track about the evolution of the metadata in time, also to go back to previous snapshot in case we are introducing mistakes there. So in order to have a clear and transparent view of the whole process of metadating this specific object, in addition to the cultural heritage object, of course, we have the digital representations that comes with, just to clarify, the authors of these two objects are different. I know that I'm saying something very naive here, but I want to clarify that these two objects are two different things. They are related to each other, of course, strongly related, but they are two different things. The author of the digital representations are the researchers that have done the job during the project. That doesn't involve the author of the original object that died a bunch of years ago. Say that the digital representation comes with, of course, metadata about the digital representation, so that are different from the original one. Provenance about the digital representation, so we are keeping track, basically speaking, about the paradata of the digital object. So all the information about the workflow that have been followed for creating the digital object from the original one. These metadata are collected in a metadata record that comes with, again, provenance information of the metadata record and change tracking information of this data. Actually, I talked about digital representation, but that is a kind of, let's say, intuitive way of talking about something complex, because we do not have one digital representation there. We do have at least 4 digital representation of the object that goes through the raw material that have been collected by means of the specific hardware that we have used, like cameras in case we have used photogrammetric techniques, or scanners files in case we have used a structured light scanner. Then the processed raw model, raw P, that is the first processing of this initial raw material into a first 3D model created kind of automatically by a software with a lot of missings and a lot of stuff that should be corrected. Then we have the digital cultural heritage object that is the consequence of the modeling of a digital, let's say, digital author that try to transform and correct and finalize that digital artifacts in its final form. And then we have the optimized digital cultural heritage object that is an optimization of that specific object, digital object, for a certain purpose. In our case, in order to make it easy to be loaded and interacted within a browser, which has specific kind of requirements. So we cannot use very heavy object in terms of dimension, otherwise they do not work. In addition to that, of course, the process comes with a continuous workflow for integrating and generating metadata, because the goal is to make these objects, these digital objects, FAIR compliant. And for being FAIR compliant, we need to work a lot with metadata production, metadata that use specific formats that are sensitive to also not only descriptive information, but also semantic information that makes metadata and so the object interoperable with others. I don't want to enter in details here, but the main data model that we have used for creating this metadata are CDOC CRM, and in particular CRM and DIG, which is a submodule dedicated to digitization of cultural heritage in general. And then, I've talked a lot. I would like to present something to you about the digital twin that we have collected, that we have created. And so I move just to my browser. And here we are. This is, this version of the digital twin is not the final one. We are correcting a bunch of things. There are a bunch of errors in encoding here. I've seen it while I was preparing this presentation that we are correcting. It's not the last version that we have. But the idea is that we have recreated exactly the entire spaces that were available for the exhibition. There is also, I don't want to put it here, but there is also the original narrator of the exhibition that brings you around the various spaces there. I don't know if you can hear it from my computer, but that's fine. It's Giovanni Carrada, who was the person responsible for the narrative there. So I just stop it. Just to say that then, by simply your mouse, you can enter in the first room and exploring exactly the same situation that we had physically of the exhibition. There are a bunch of things, different kind of 3D objects that you can interact with. Here there are no glasses. Of course, it's a digital version, so you can take the object and, seeing it very closely, you can reverse it to see the cover, something that you cannot technically do, okay, when you are dealing with a physical exhibition. There are a bunch of metadata here. Should be cleaned up, but still, this is exactly what we are doing. We are trying to do, and of course, we can move on across the entire exhibition. There are videos as they were in the original places there, and there are 6 different rooms that present these specific object. These specific objects that were included. Since we are in Padua, there was also this one. I don't know if you can recognize it, but okay. So you see, these are the herbarium by Aldrovandi as well that were digitized in 3D in the page where they were opened here. So there are, as I anticipated, 6 different rooms you can technically access, and you can go around and to see exactly what was the same exhibition. This is a pure digital twin. So what was there physically that is not there anymore, also because there are, we have a lot of works that are revising the entire rooms within the Palazzo Poggi. So Palazzo Poggi, as before, do not exist anymore. That's the main point. So this is also a way to preserve how it was a few years ago. And here there are basically a lot of information. Let me just open room 5, that is the biggest one, with a lot of objects. That was, full of a lot of different things that you can click and open and analyze and so on. So all these kind of objects that you see here, the digital twin will be published on Zenodo. So you can just download it, even copy it in your computer, run it without any problem with open licenses. That can be done. Also, all the objects will be, every single object will be uploaded on Zenodo as different documents. In order to download it and to use for your research or for teaching. I had a very interesting discussion with a professor in US that work in a university that is in the middle of a desert, and they have a problem She was an art historian, and she had the problem of bringing people to cultural heritage institutions because there are none around the area. So she wanted to use these tools just to present things that comes from this period in Italy. So 6 different rooms, as I anticipated, that you yes, 5 minutes left, that you can just join, and again, you can experience again, even if without smelling anything, of course, but at least experience again something that doesn't exist physically anymore, but now exists digitally. Go back to the presentation just to say that that is a starting point. What we can do, starting from something like that, is that then we have a lot of stuff and we can build up new narratives there. Something that you could not do during the temporary exhibition. But starting from the temporary exhibition, we can just explore new narrative for introducing something. And this is something that we have kind of pushed the researcher involved in order to try to create new things, starting from even the objects, some of the objects that are included in the exhibition. This is an example. This is the Cospi Codex. It's one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen, okay? That is not exposed anywhere because it's very fragile. Even in the original exhibition has been exposed for 2 months only, and then it was just put back to the Bologna University Library, where it is preserved, closed in specific, packages in order to avoid problems. That is a beautiful thing, and 2 researchers, Davide Domenici, who is expert in these kind of objects, and Alice Bordignon, who is a digital humanist working with us, have created a scholarly digital edition and put it available online. That is already available online, if you want. Let me just show it very quickly to you. It is here. So you have, in practice, 4 different narratives that you can use for exploring these cultural heritage objects. With these narratives, you can explore the history of the manuscript, and by clicking this arrow, you can go ahead with explanation. The text can be also read by a tool in order to hear what is written there. It is written in English here, but it is also provided in Italian in case you want it in Italian. And you can explore the narrative that the curators of this scholarly digital edition wanted to showcase. And so you see there is description, and then you move on specific part of the codex. This is to cite objects, so this is something that was not easy to see in the physical environment just because we cannot turn it. There was a mirror just to see what is there, but it's not precise as something like that. There are annotations there that explain specific excerpt of that specific codex, and you can move on by means of this description that the various authors have, of the digital scholarly edition have shared with all of us. This tool is available online. It has been published in Pure 3D, which is one of the most innovative things I've seen in the past years. It's a publication environment for 3D scholarly edition, which is wonderful. That can be used for teaching, but also for other, of course, purposes. And that was, honestly, probably the last thing I wanted to, what is it? Yeah, here. The last thing I wanted to say, I want just to thank you again for inviting me here, and to, in case you are interested in these kind of things, sending me an email, a message on social networks, whatever, because this is just a starting point. We started here experimenting, but the idea is to keep running this kind of activities in the futures in order to preserve in terms cultural heritage, not only 2D cultural heritage, but in particular 3D cultural heritage, with all the context that is around. So the spaces of Palazzo Poggi, how the specific narrative of exhibition was created, and these kind of things. And to create even new narratives thanks to these specific tools. All the material that I've shown to you, open material, you can reuse. And also the software for running it is an open source software developed by the CNR called Aten. which is was created exactly for doing these kind of things and to put it available on a browser, on a smartphone, on a tablet for anyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Silvio. Thank you so much, Silvio. Great work. And again, open as usual, I would say. So one, maybe two quick questions from the audience, if you have some. Yes, one over there. Thank you.
Thank you. Glad you're okay. Thank you. I'm blown away. It's amazing. So do you think, it kind of begs the question, it's kind of time for the open access exhibition, yeah? Like, maybe not, obviously every exhibition doesn't maybe want a 3D view, but just to have the data of what was exhibited. What I see is museums don't do this, and it's a blind spot, and you're doing it. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you, really.
Another quick question. Oh, over there, sorry. I couldn't see you. Yeah.
So if I understood the fish correctly, what you did in this exhibition, you don't provide it digitized in the state in which it is, but in the state as it was supposed to be. Is this somehow reflected? Because I will go through this virtual exhibition and see the objects not exactly as they were, right?
This is a good question, and you catch it very sensitively, because what I said in the slides is different from the exhibition. But let me, can I have the screen again? Okay, thank you. So let me go back to room 5, where the flying fish was actually, which is here. Okay, here we are. It is a digital twin. So the object was represented exactly in the shape it was in the exhibition. But what I indeed showed in the slide here was a different version. Because what we wanted to show, I didn't have time to say it, but the point is that this is another thing that we could do thanks to these technologies. So the fact that we have the real representation of that object, but we can also, in principle, have reconstruction of the object as it was originally, and to showcase both the things, and by means of these tools like Atom, also to have a kind of slider that allow you to see this transition between the current state and the original state, in a way. And that was just an example that we have made, okay, as an exemplar to show these possibilities, okay? But the digital twin that is actually provided is set on the state of the objects that were exposed, not how they were at the time, okay? Just to clarify it. But great catch, because, I mean...
So, okay, I don't think I see any other hands up. So thanks again. Thank you very much, Silvio.